All right, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the SuperCoach AFL podcast, your in and out guide to the greatest game on earth. Well, it's not just AFL footy, it's SuperCoach, because footy's back. I'll tell you what. And so is your chance at winning the 50K. I'm your host, Jaymz Clements, and joining me today, we've got three of the best SuperCoach brains on the planet. Two of them right here, right now. We've got the guru, Al Paton. What's going on, Al?
James, thank you. What an intro, and Tim, what an upgrade. Like, how exciting is it to have SuperCoach back? And compared to where we've been doing our podcast for about the last decade in a basement somewhere, this is just tells you how big SuperCoach is going to be this year.
Yeah, massive upgrade, Al. James, thanks for having us. Looks like it's going to be an awesome year of SuperCoach, Al. Really looking forward to getting stuck in, and I think we've learned so much throughout the last couple of weeks in pre-season, and looking forward to dissecting it all today.
That man over there is Tim Michell. He actually put on pants for the first time in months to come in for this one, which is great. We're also going to bring on Dan Batten to talk all things rookies later on in the show. But to be honest, more than anything, heading into the season 2024, have you been more excited about a season before? Because there's so many changes. We've got 4 more trades. We've got a round 0. What do you think, Al? Is there been any other time that's been better than 2024?
Well, I must admit, when the AFL came out and announced this new opening round concept, I wouldn't say panic set in, but I was thinking, how is this going to work? Like SuperCoach, we have extra games, are these going to count? And all this stuff was going on in my head. But as we got closer and closer to the season, it's actually like the excitement is higher than I've ever seen. And we get a look at players before we potentially have to lock them in for SuperCoach. The preseason matches have been fantastic as well. So, and there's just so many players to pick from this year. So, I mean, it's just going to be huge.
That's right, and that's the thing. We're gonna do that today, right? So we're gonna look at some of these practice matches, see what you were looking for. We're also gonna talk about those opening round games, the rules, what tactics we might have. We'll also talk about the watch list for those games. I need that desperately. That watch list. I'm gonna be hanging on every word that both of you say. I'm just like, come on, give me the gold. Where's the gold? And then obviously we'll have Dan on to talk rookies. And I'll tell you what, this round 0 for me, as like the punter who's like just all about footy all the time, but has never cracked like that top hundy. Just give me that top hundy one time in SuperCoach. I'm like doing NBL during the summer. I'm doing BBL. Now we've got AFL back. And I'm like, I just need some of this gold. So we're going to get into the gold today. Remember, you can sign up to SuperCoach Plus. You can also jump on tips.com.au for all your AFL tipping. Because even though SuperCoach might not actually properly start until round 1, these games matter. So you still have to tip them. And of course, all the insights you'll need for all the SuperCoach gear across the season, codesports.com.au. Sign up, subscribe. It's awesome. It'll have all the SuperCoach gold that you'll need. So before we do anything else, these practice matches, gentlemen, we just saw it, right? We had match sims. We had the actual community games serving those underserved communities of inner city Melbourne.
Yeah, that's right.
What was that about? Anyway, Al, what were you looking for during pre-season for these games heading into your SuperCoach season?
Well, when SuperCoach opened, we got the early team picker in December and then opened for good in January. I think the first thing that struck me and would have struck a lot of SuperCoach players is that the forward line was, let's be honest, a bit of a dumpster fire. All the great scoring forwards that we had last year, guys like Tim Taranto, Connor Rosie, Zach Butters, Stephen Coniglio, Errol Goulden, they weren't there. They're midfielders only this year. And obviously we love to pick a forward who actually plays a lot of time in the midfield because they can get a lot of the ball and score really well. But when Champion Data reassess their positions at the end of the year, it means we can't pick those guys in the forward line. So you're looking at a pretty barren landscape down there, and especially with Jack McRae was the one guy that we thought, well, this is a bit of a gift for us because he's been a SuperCoach legend for us for many years, and now we can get him in the forward line. But what's Bevo doing with him? Where's he going to play? And now he's done a hamstring. We haven't even seen him in the preseason, so very hard to pick him. So it's like, what's left? And then we watch the preseason games, and all of a sudden, we've got these value picks just popping up from everywhere. Nat Five is back in the midfield. James Jordan at Sydney looks like he's going to get a great role. Who we got? Zach Fisher has gone from Carlton to North Melbourne. He's gone down into the half-back line playing that Jack Zeeble, Aaron Hall role where you just get possessions for fun. So there's actually a stack of value down there and some really good rookies as well that I'm finding it hard to fit them all in.
Yeah, definitely agree with you, Al. I think that's probably one of the most exciting things about this year. I think when we first sort of saw the idea of round 0 and thought, what sort of impact is it going to have on SuperCoach? The biggest thing and probably the biggest panic from people was that everyone was going to come out of round 0 with the same teams, wasn't it, Al? That we were going to watch these 4 games and it was going to be pretty obvious who the rookies were to pick and the mid-prices were going to pick. But I think more and more as we assess sort of the impact of the early buys, but then also all these players that have cropped up throughout the pre-season games, it's probably going to be the best year of Supercoach we've had for variety. Like I'm looking at the number of rookies that we've got, in particular in the forward line and the midfield, and I know Dan's going to jump on very shortly to talk about some of those, but assessing how many could potentially play in round one when Supercoach gets underway, I reckon we might have 35, 40 rookies in those two positions alone to pick from, which is just crazy because as you said, Al, like in our forward lines, we're trying to fit Fisher in, we're trying to fit James Harmes in, we're trying to fit James Jordan in after how well he performed.
Jack Billings.
Most of Sydney's midfield falling over in his first pre-season up there as well. Jack Billings, yeah, and Nat Fyfe. So there's no shortage of forward mid-price options. And then we're trying to fit Darcy Wilson, Bailey Laurie, Biggie Nguyen that scored really well in pre-season, all these good rookies into our midfield and forward line around those guys too. So it's going to be really interesting to see which way people go. And I think with these 40 trades, we're going to be using a lot of them early on to sideways swap some of these rookies because the chances of getting them all right, James, is pretty slim.
How much stock did you put in for the preseason games? Or was it more about structure for each of the teams, looking like, at least you got X amount of percentage of game time out there just to see him run around, you're happy with that? Are you looking at specific performances? Obviously, with the rookies, you kind of it's very helpful, isn't it? Where you go, aha, see, he played and he's a gun. He's in, off we go. Outside of that, though, are you looking at any other sort of specifics?
I think, it's really hard to... We can see the Supercoach points from those games, and you want to try and just put that out of your mind a bit, and you're really watching to see, because those points obviously aren't going to count towards anything in the real season, so it doesn't matter if you pick a guy, Zach Fisher, who's come off a 130-point game, but when you see the role that he's got and his potential to score that well, it's very hard to ignore that. And then on the flip side, you have someone like Luke Davies-Uniacke, who has been in my midfield the entire pre-season, scored 30-something Supercoach points. And, I mean, it's a practice match. Does it really matter? He's just, going through the motions. But probably not ideal. You'd prefer to have someone going into round 0 or round 1 actually, in red-hot form. So it's a bit of a balancing act. But, yeah, certainly with the rookies, you're just looking for who's playing and who's likely to get a game, next week or when round 1 rolls around.
There you go. You heard it here first. Fire LDU into the sun.
Yeah.
It's all over. What about you, Tim? Was there anything specific that sort of stuck out from the preseason stuff, specifically form-wise or anything?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with Al. The biggest thing that you're looking for in pre-season's got to be role changes, and some of the key ones that we saw, and they were sort of teased early on in pre-season with the guys that like Nick Martin at Essendon, like Max Holmes at Geelong, Zach Fisher that Al mentioned as well. We're going to go back and play in defence, which we know Supercoach for so long has been about guys that win contested footy, win their own ball. But I think in the last couple of years, with the way that footy's being played and the amount of sort of uncontested footy that's being won by defenders, it's trending more and more towards those guys that get a lot of the ball, take the kick-ins. And we had that ticked off from Nick Martin, playing off halfback for Essendon against Geelong, 28 disposals and a couple of goals, scored well. And you can get him for less than 500k in your midfield. Carl Amon at Hawthorn's another one. He sort of played in that defensive role in the last month of last season, but again, he was back there against the Western Bulldogs taking kick-ins and scored well, and Max Holmes was great too in limited game time. I think he had close to 30 disposals for Geelong, so those were all big ticks for me, and it sort of forced a bit of a rethink about how I might attack my midfield because some of these guys playing off half-back look like they could be really good scorers for our teams this year.
Nice one. I love it. I'm just stoked because I'm like, right, Harry Mackay still can't kick straight. I was never going to have him in there, but at least I still know this, right? That's what it's all about. As a Carlton fan, I'm just like, come on, man. Come on. I just want you to go out there, do everything, move up the field. I want to see more of this. And it's just like, nah, still can't kick straight. Just get a snag. Just get one snag, Hazza. Anyway, the thing for me is I look at like last year and go, wow, could Nick Larkey, and we've brought this up on the AFL Today show, it's like, can Nick Larkey kick a ton? Let's go. I've had him in my forward line for a bunch of this preseason. Just go on. Kick a ton. What do you reckon? I don't think he will, but I'm going to leave him there until the last minute when I could just go, all right, Billings, done. But speaking of which, let's go to the opening round. It's round 0. Round 0. It's the first time we're at round 0. The AFL season, in my brain, has always started, and has for the last, long time. Carlton, Richmond, go to the G. We scream, footy's back, and over we go, 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 go. Now we're going up north, round 0. Who are the players that we're lasering in on? Because obviously we've got this round 0 thing. What are the tactics that you're looking at for this round 0? Because they don't count, right? So take us through it, Al.
Yeah, well, so I suppose we should quickly just go through those rules to remind people that, these 4 games this week don't count towards Supercoach. So the first lockout of the season to get your teams in is that Carlton-Richmond game. I think it's the 14th of March on the Thursday night. So what effectively means is you get a free look at all the players playing this week before we have to lock them into our team. So, that's a great gift, especially when you're looking to see which rookies are going to get games and some of these cheaper guys. Yeah. But probably the flip side to bear in mind, as Tim said, the first thing you think of is whoever plays well this week, I'm picking him.
Straight in.
But if you look at the fixture over the first 6 rounds following round 1, 4 of those rounds are now bye rounds, which, we love in Supercoach, a bye round, where those 8 teams will all have a week off. So, it's in pairs. We start off with, I think it's Brisbane and Carlton have a bye, and then it's GWS Gold Coast, and it rolls through. So you just got to be mindful of stacking your team with too many of these guys so that when those bye rounds roll around, you don't have half your team missing. So it's a matter of really pinpointing who you want to target, and I think you can probably get, if someone, probably it's worth mentioning that these games will count towards price calculations. So if a rookie goes off and scores 100, that will affect their price movement. So that will obviously make them a very popular pick. But at the top end, you may be looking at just maybe 1 or 2 guns from each of those buys that you can afford to carry over those first few rounds. Is that how you see it, Tim?
Yeah, I think so. And then at the same time, though, like with the Brisbane and the Carlton players, they got, as you said, they've got the first of the buys, so their prices won't change until post-buy. They play round 0, they play round 1, and then their third game's not until after their bye. So you can potentially have a look at them for a couple of weeks, then bring in someone like Kadeem Coleman or bring in Zach Williams if you don't want to start him and you want to free up a bit of cash. So just gives you an opportunity, in particular for someone like Williams, who hasn't played a lot of footy in the last 3 or 4 years, to have a look at what his role might be at Carlton. Are they going to sub him out and manage his minutes and that sort of thing? So, yeah, that's the beauty of round 0 and for Brisbane and Carlton players anyway, round 1 as well, that you get a couple of looks at them before potentially trading them in.
I love it. I love this. The Zach Williams quandary. It's chaos. I don't know how he's going to go. I don't know what he's going to look like. All I know is that I've had him in my team since it opened up. But we've also got tactics. So with this comes a sort of change, obviously, guns and rookies, right? I've had that for years. You can go mid-price as well. This year, with the dearth of options up forward, it feels like you can load up on primos and rookies in your back line till the cows come home and away you go. And then up forward, you can just go flat out rookies if you want. You go mid-prices because you've got Fife, you've got Billings, you've got Jordan, you've got plenty of handy options. So what tactics are you both looking at this year with having, the rolling sort of weird buys here and there? What are you planning on doing?
I think you mentioned that spending up big in the back line. I think a lot of people are doing that, and I think Tim put a team out today which had how many primos? 6, 7 primos in the back line?
6 primo defence, yeah. Nice. Hayden Young at D6. So.
I love this. You're already
upgraded. It won't stay, but those are the sort of options we've got this year with all the value. I think most of us are probably going to go Zach Fisher at F1 now. So when you've got a player under 400K at F1, it gives you a lot of cash to spend elsewhere, and that's going to be really interesting to see where people do it. Do you load your midfield or load your defence? I'm leaning towards defence, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people go deep in their midfields this year, because that's where most of the points are.
And the other thing we should mention is the ruck, where in the past we've had to spend a lot of our money. I mean, you're spending maybe 1.4 million or something of your salary cap straight up on the 2 best ruckmen. But this year we've got 2 great value options in Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy.
It's a gift from the Supercoach gods. It's like we're back, just lock and load, done. Grundy, done. Pack her up, right, boys.
So we had to give them up for 12 months. We let them have their partnership for 12 months, ruin them both in Supercoach for a year, and the payoff is that they're both great options this year. So I think it was worth 1 year of pain to get them bout for under 600K this year.
Yeah, I love this. I basically just want to play Tim English at every position.
Yeah.
Like, just go, can I get him as a backman?
He did take one kick out last year from behind, so I think he should have got defender status.
Pretty important kick in as well, as it turned out. But still, give me more Tinglish. But let's talk about these. Is there any other rules, tactics you want to go over, Al?
No, I think we've pretty much covered that off. Yeah, there's a lot of different ideas out there, and our good friend The Phantom, who I think will be part of this show during the year, but he put out a team today where his strategy is to load up on the bench, maybe spend a bit more money there than you would normally. So what that means is when you have these players missing through the early buys, you can bring on these bench guys who are maybe, you can rely on a bit more confidently than we would normally. So it's best 18 scoring in those buy rounds. Only your top 18 scores count. But what it means is every top gun you might have out, you're basically replacing them with a rookie. So that's something to think about as well. And I think, as Tim said, with the bargain, we're saving money in the ruck, saving money in the forward line. It's like, where do you spend the cash? Do you load up in the back line, get an extra primo or 2 in the midfield, or maybe you use it to get a few more $180,000, $200,000 rookies just sitting on your bench.
Nice. I'm just happy that, look, not here for injuries, but at least Sam Walsh, my beloved Sam Walsh, being out for the first couple of weeks just saved me like a pretty tough decision.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I want to roll with him, but I can't. And then they took it away from me, so I'm happy with that. Let's talk opening round. Speaking of which, talking to Carlton, they're on the second game, aren't they? Round 0. Let's have a look at some of these players from each of these teams. We've got Sydney, Melbourne on the Thursday. Two teams at the opposite ends of the hype spectrum, I want to say. Melbourne, we've got questions of culture. There's questions of culture, UCL. Sydney, they were like the hypiest of hype teams, I think, going into this year, and then bitten by the injury bug straight off. But in terms of SuperCoach, that opens up a lot of opportunities, right, for the likes of Jordan and co, because they're missing Luke Parker. It'll be Taylor Adams, but we do have Brody Grundy in there. It's kind of handy. You've got Werrell as well, which is fantastic. I've been locked and loaded on Goulden from the very get-go, but take us through three players you want to have a look at in this game, the first game of the AFL season. Al, what do you reckon?
Well, Errol probably has to be one because I must admit I haven't really considered him all year just because of that bye. And I thought if I'm already going to have Grundy, I'm already probably going to have Nick Dacos, who'll both be missing that week. I can't really afford any other Sydney or Collingwood players, but seeing him the other night, and then if he does that again on Thursday, he's going to be very hard to leave out. He's so good to watch, so talented. And as you mentioned, you'll probably get more opportunities in the midfield with those guys out injured. Callum Mills as well is another one. Hard to see his scoring going backwards. So it's going to be a tough watch if you don't have him. So we'll see how he goes. Grundy, you mentioned, obviously, he was a little underwhelming in the practice match, but hopefully that was just blowing out the cobwebs. We know what he can do when he is a solo ruck. He's, was obviously superstar for us back in his Collingwood days, and then even for a few patches last year when Gorm was out, he was able to score at that level. And the SCG, you play a lot of games. Rucks traditionally score really well there, small ground, lots of ball ups and things, something to keep in mind. So, if he scores well, just lock him away. If he's poor, maybe do you think about trying to... it's only another 250 grand or something to get up to Tim English, but might prompt some other thoughts. And then it's obviously the rookies. So we know Melbourne's already announced a couple. Caleb Windsor is going to play, and Blake Howes also in defence. Probably not sure he's going to score so many points, but Caleb Windsor was pretty exciting to watch in the preseason. And Matt Roberts is another one over at the Swans who... the Phantom, again, loves his junior numbers, was a very big scorer at that level. So if he can get a regular spot in the Sydney team, he could be one we definitely want to think about paying up for as well.
I think Sydney-Melbourne is it's an awesome opener for the simple fact that we get to look at Petrarca, whether or not Oliver's playing as well, right? It's like you have these big moments of pretty big Supercoach primos, pretty big names right here. What do they look like right off the get-go? It's really handy just to have that sneak peek, right?
There's heaps of good names. And, Clayton Oliver, Melbourne says he'll play. So
that's the bit I want to see.
Yeah, he's the second most expensive midfielder in Supercoach. I'm not sure what his ownership is. It'd have to be very
2%.
low. Yeah,
2%, which normally this time of year he'd be 25, 30% at least.
What happens if he scores 120?
If he comes out and scores 120 plus, we're going to be tearing our hair out next week, I think, to work out whether to pick him or not.
To the moon, Clay. Is there anybody else you want to laser in on Sydney, Melbourne or anything, or is that enough?
Gawn, it's kind of crazy that we get Gawn and Grundy in the same game, but given
it's almost like they planned it like
that. What Gawn did in the preseason, I think you'd have to, fall over to not be picked.
Nice. Brisbane, Carlton, a replay of a heartbreaking prelim from last year. Tell you what, still hurts. My hopes got a tiny little bit up in that game as a Carlton fan. I was like, here we go. Oh, geez, we could almost be in the crowd. But I didn't let myself run away with it. And I was like, all right, no, they'll somehow cook this, and they did. Tim, players you're looking on for this one. What are we looking at as the Blues sort of go up north? I don't feel wildly confident in Carlton from a Supercoach point of view for probably the first month or so. They've got a weird schedule, a tough schedule. Especially going up north to play at the Gabatoir. It's not great.
Yeah.
But who are you looking at?
Zach Williams is just the one I want to see. As I touched on, sort of how many minutes they play him. Played and got through the VFL practice match before Carlton's game against Melbourne, which was a good sign, and Michael Voss coming out and declaring that he's going to play. You think that has to be a good sign as well, that the Blues have clearly built him up to be ready for this, because I think a lot of people expected that he probably wouldn't play round 0, but I can see a scenario, James, where he gets subbed out after 2.5 quarters, 3 quarters, and then that would make you think twice about whether you're picking him or not, because if he's on 55, 60 points, great, but his cash generation is going to stall pretty quickly if he's being subbed out at 3-quarter time most weeks. So he's definitely one. I think Kadeem Coleman without Connor McKenna in the team. So McKenna was the number 1 kick-out taker for the Lions last year. Kadeem Coleman, after scoring 127 in the prelim and the grand final last year when he had about 25 disposals at halftime of that game, I think he's a player that understandably has been really popular in pre-season, and we just want that last sort of tick of approval to pick him in our teams. So hopefully he comes out and plays really well. And the other one, we talk about role changes. I think Cam Rayner is going to be really exciting to watch this year. His price is slightly awkward. He's about $380K in Supercoach, but spent most of this preseason in the midfield, so looking forward to seeing him unleashed, the number 1 draft pick by the Lions as well. I think he can really take the next step in Supercoach and potentially sort of average at least 85, 90 points this year.
Nice. I like that. I'm just like, hey, can someone say Hugh McCluggage's name for me just really quickly? That's all I'm after. But either way, it's a great call about Kitty Coleman as well, right? Like, you look at this and go, wow, the hype coming out of the finals, how real is that going to be? Like, that's a fascinating setup for round 0. It's what round 0 is almost built for, if you ask me. Then you've got the Dimmer Bowl. I love a good Dimmer Bowl. Gold Coast versus Richmond. Just rather have a dimmy right now. Actually, I'm a bit hungry. Dimmer versus Old Club. You've got Gold Coast Richmond. This is the Saturday Arvo game. You mentioned Tim Taranto earlier. We don't have him in the forward line anymore. You're like, does he become like instantly a POD, or as I like to call him, a bit of a pods, a bit of a James Podsiadly. Like, is he a pod out of nowhere already?
Yeah, 100%. I'd have to look up his numbers, but he would not be in many teams. He had a bit of an odd year last year where he was awesome in the first half of the season, averaged about 115 through to the buys, and then the back end just not really sure what happened. You'd think his average is more like 80s or 90s, so dropped off a lot of radars. It wouldn't shock me at all if he goes back to around the 110 mark. He's always going to be in those centre bounces for Richmond, lays a heap of tackles, which is a great base to build your score on. So, yeah, if you're looking for someone different, and if he puts up a big score in this game, he might be one we could think about. I mean, this is quite personal for me with as a Tigers man. With Dimmer, when he quit last year, I thought, look, good luck to you, Dimmer. You've given us 3 flags. Whatever you do.
What are you talking about? I saw you wandering around burning pictures of Dimmer.
Well, I wasn't that excited when he signed with Gold Coast, and then seeing him the other night in the polo and, talking a bit of smack before this game, I'm not sure about that. So I just think we might need to just put him in his box a little bit. He did what he had to do at Richmond, but we don't need Gold Coast coming up too quickly, I don't think. But they've got some good Supercoach options, and I have to say he's actually done the right thing by us in the preseason by coming out and saying Sam Flanders, pick him in Supercoach. He's going to continue the role that he had at the back end of last year, which is a bit of centre bounce, bit of sort of half forward, winning a heap of the ball. He played that role in the preseason, but didn't get a heap of possessions. And I just wonder if the Dimmer game style suits him as much, where it's a bit more just get it forward at all costs, rather than last year maybe the Suns chipped it around a bit more. So he's definitely a watch for me in that game. And at the Tigers, Thompson Dow is probably one to watch, one of Dan Batten's favourites. We'll get him on in a minute, but picked him a few years ago. But this year might be the year because he's been given some real centre bounce minutes in the preseason, a real bull sort of midfielder. He doesn't do a lot else apart from winning clearances, but he is really good at winning clearances, and the Supercoach scoring system really rewards that. So he's in that sort of mid-200 price range. If he was in the forward line, you could add him to that long list, but in the midfield, maybe a little bit trickier. But again, if he has a big score in this game, he'll definitely be one to consider. And talking of role changes, Tim, Alex Sexton, who has played, I think this is his 14th AFL season, and we would never consider him in Supercoach. But now his ownership's just going through the roof.
He averaged about 20 last year, and he's going to start the year as one of the most popular players. It's bizarre. Bringing Sexton back, we're calling it, with Damien Hardwick. So set him back. And what did he score? 120 in pre-season, had 31 disposals, 11 marks, just to make himself one of the most popular picks of the year, which is quite incredible considering how long he has been in the game. But are you okay, Al? Because I know we're on the TV now and everything, but I've never seen you that fired up. And that is saying something. You're normally quite a mellow man, but talking about Damien Hardwick,
there's a little bit riding on this one.
Got the blood boiling a bit.
I told you, Dimmer, he's going to start burning. He's going to put dudes in headlocks. It's going to be great. Look, the Alex Sexton question is amazing because if nothing else, it gives us all the Timberlake memes we could use. Right?
Yes.
Dimmer's bringing sexy back. That's what it's all about. Giants Collingwood, another prelim replay. I don't mind if we're going to go with the round 0 approach. Give us some pretty handy games from last year. It's fine. GWS, one of the more exciting lists we've got going. They're on the rise. Collingwood, I don't know. You might have heard about them. Reigning premiers, I guess. Jeez, still burns me up inside too. But a really, really interesting setup because you got plenty of big names on GWS, and obviously on Collingwood, you've got just a few. Like you got Nick Dacos, who is listed again in the back line. Love this. It's just like he's going to be one of the bigger questions, obviously, as we look at this one. In terms of just the overall structure of your team, I think, for the back line.
Yep. Like
just that simple question of like, you start with Dacos. Like that's almost the foundation for the vast majority of Supercoach teams this year, right?
Well, yeah, I saw a lot of really people who know their Supercoach and studying the fixture and studying the form and thinking the strategy this year is to go in without Nick Dacos because we know in round 4 he runs into his nemesis Finn McGuinness at Hawthorn, then he's got a bye in round 5. Maybe you could snap him up at a bit of a cheaper price. But as the preseason's gone on, I think more and more of those people have caved. I think, Tim, you were in the no Dacos camp to start with. How are you sitting right now?
He's in 71% of teams now. So if you don't start him and he goes 150 in the first couple of rounds, like you're in all sorts. You're playing catch up from the first couple of rounds of the season. So I think as his ownership rises, like I'm getting closer and closer to putting him in my team and just disregarding that Finn McGuinness factor altogether. And people thinking that we're going to get him cheaper. Like there's every chance that he would have been close to 700k, wouldn't he, if he didn't run into James Blank's knee and rule himself out of the last 3 games last year. Like he wasn't going to score that well against Hawthorn given because Finn McGuinness put him in his pocket. But at the same time, we would have lost him as a defender, I think, if he played those last 3 games because he transitioned into the midfield. But his average was 116 because of that 40-point game against Hawthorn. He would have averaged 120 plus otherwise. So in a funny way, and the silver lining of all that is we still get Nick Dacos as a defender this year, but we can also get him for 650k instead of 700. So there's a lot of factors leaning towards starting him. And I dare say in the next couple of weeks, I'm probably going to cave and put him in.
Would you put him in straight into your defence, or is there an argument for picking him in the midfield?
I think probably because I'm going to pick Nick Martin because of his dazzling preseason, and he'll get defender status by round 7, we think, when the first lot of DPPs kick in. I'll probably start Dacos in defence, and then I'll have the swing between those 2 guys. But I can see a world where people would start him in midfield and then look to transition him back at some point.
Yeah, I think that one argument for doing that might be that when he does miss with the bye, you might have stronger rookies in the midfield who can come on and replace him compared to defence. But I did have it structured up that way at one stage, but he's moved back into the back line for me now that James Sicily, I think we probably ruling him out just because I'm not sure what his role is going to be with all those injuries at Hawthorn. So there's not as many big name defenders to pick from anymore. So I think I'll have to put Dacos there. But who else are you looking for in this Pies Giants game?
The biggest one's probably Finn McRae, isn't it? Like we just don't know what his role is going to be. Like first couple of months of preseason, all the Pies social media videos are like, how good's this guy? Bursting out of midfield in match sims, kicking goals, and we're like, oh, Finn McRae has finally arrived. Like to put himself up there, not to the same level as his brother's been in Supercoach, but like we're finally going to see that rookie breakout that we've been waiting for. And again, as the weeks have gone on, as we get closer to round 0 and round 1, it's looking less and less likely that he's going to be in Collingwood's team. And if he's in the 23, it might be as the sub. So that's what I'm most keen to get a read on, just where he sits in Craig McRae's pecking order, if he's going to be sub, if he's even going to be in the team. And if he is in the team, we get a look at him and how many centre bounces he's going to have and all that as well. So Finn McRae's a big one because he was just about locked into most forward lines, Al, because he listed as a forward this year. But you don't really need to pay 150k for him with all the other options that we've got if his job security is not that good. So I think him and probably Aaron Cadman's the other one as well, doing a bit of ruck work, former number 1 draft pick, averaged about 25 points a game last year, which isn't sort of foreign for key position players when they come in their first season as Supercoach. But with a little bit more time in the ruck, he looks a little bit bigger as well, like he's been in the gym over the off-season. I think his scoring could go up as well. But again, not a guy I'm that interested in just because we've got so many other good forward options.
And with the Giants, just worth mentioning their fixture that after this round 0 game that doesn't count in round 1 and 2, round 3 they've got the bye, but in round 1 and 2 they've got North Melbourne and West Coast. So someone like Cadman could have, kick a bag in one of those games and spark some price movements, or a Tom Green could go absolutely ballistic.
I think the big one's going to be Toby Green. Like if he comes out and plays really well against the Pies, kicks 5, and then he could potentially kick 2 bags the next 2 weeks, he might make us completely throw out this mid-price forward structure, and he might be a must-have for at least those first couple of rounds of the season. So, yeah, Toby Green's a massive watch for round 0. It's
the weirdest part, I think, of GWS as well, right? There's all this top-end sort of talent. Obviously with the midfielders, you got Toby Green as well at the front. At 508, I love that idea of him just going, hang on a second, check this out. I'm Toby Green.
Yeah.
Bang! Off he goes. And it, like, the free look at him in week 1 is like absolutely invaluable. So I love that. But of course, how do we feel about some of the bigger names in the GWS midfield? You got the likes of Green. Whitfield off the back line as well, right? You've got these like interesting price dudes. They were awesome in the back half of last year. So I was way more tempted, I think, more than any other year just to like load up on GWS, but they do have this buy sort of situation, which is kind of a bit weird, right? So how are you feeling about that midfield, Al?
Yeah, I mean, Lockie Whitfield just has been a high Supercoach scorer in the past. He's burnt so many of us with injuries and roles. But yeah, towards the back end of last year, he actually got back to what we know he can do. And at that price, I think he could actually be a really good pick this year, but the buy just makes it really difficult. In the midfield, I think Josh Kelly is one that we know can torch, let's say, lesser opposition. So against those in those couple of early rounds, he could really go nuts. But yeah, Tom Green's the one that I've got in my team at the moment. Even with the buy, just because I think at the end of the year, most people are going to want to have him. He could finish in the top 3 or 4 scoring mids overall. He just has the perfect game for Supercoach scoring. We know that formula from Champions Data rewards contested ball winners, which he's just brilliant at. All that contested stuff. And if he can start maybe getting a few cheaper posies and kicking a couple of goals as well, his scoring could absolutely go through the roof. So he's the one that I've got sitting in my mids at the moment.
Nice one. Tim, quick, rank. We're going to go Caniglio, Green, Kelly. Who would you like? Which way would you rank him?
Oh, Cogs absolutely ruined my Supercoach season a couple of years ago when I traded him out and he went back into the midfield and averaged about 300 after that from that point on in the season. So he can be 3, Kelly 2, and Tom Green there's daylight between Tom Green and those other 2. I think if you're going to pick any of those 3, it's got to be Green.
I love it. I've been all over Green from the very get-go this season, so I'm happy to hear that. It's not bad. All right, let's take a quick break. We're bringing the rookie whisperer, the Wookiee whisperer. Jeez, sounds like a Star Wars podcast all of a sudden, the Wookiee whisperer. Dan Batten. Thanks, Tim. It's been good. And bring in Dan right after this. All right, we're back. Let's do it. Let's talk some rookies. This is the most crucial element, I think, to this, any Supercoach season. Nailing your rookies. You can't screw it up, Al. I'll tell you that much. But of all of the ones that we're looking at this season, who actually turns into a legit cash cow? That's what we need to know from the very get-go, which is why we've brought in the rookie whisperer, not to be confused with any sort of a Wookiee whisperer. I'll tell you that much. It's Dan Batten. Dan, how are you going?
I'm well, yeah. Obviously, the first 2 preseason games all done and dusted, and yeah, we learned a lot about the rookies, I think.
Nice one. Let's go through. Do you want to do the top 3 for each line for defense, midfield, forwards? Do we need to do rucks? Like basically rucks. It's like who's 102,000? Bang, done.
We might have one, don't we? But we'll get to that. But I think we have to mention. Talk about an exciting new year of Supercoach, and it's great to be on the show here. And Dan sporting the new look as well, bringing the Mo. So very impressive.
Well, I mean, Sexton's gone down back. I thought I'd try something different as well. So
very good. Well, do you want to cover the ruck off first because that should be pretty quick? But can we pick a Richmond player there?
I think so, yeah. Sam Naismith was playing in the VFL pretty much all of last year for Port Melbourne. Obviously, he was at the Swans for ages, just couldn't get on the park with injuries. So he's 123,000, scored about 80 in the first practice game. So I think he's probably the only ruck option we've got. Toby Nankervis might be back in a couple of weeks, but especially if he scores well in opening round, I think we can just lock him in because there's not really any other ruck options. Just looking down back now, I think probably the top option back there is Josh Gibkiss. He was a cheapie for us a couple of years ago, had injury issues last season. He's back at 150K because of that. And I think he scored quite well in the preseason in the official game as well. Just an interceptor, doesn't need much of the footy to score well. So lock him into your sides, I think. Zach Reed's another one who I think he's got a pretty solid role. When we're looking at these rookies, I tend to, check 3 things: job security, scoring potential, and role. A key defender isn't generally a good role, but I think with Zach Reed, he can use the ball well, he can intercept, and we saw that against the Cats in the practice games. So he's another one I think to slot in. Nick Caulfield as well for the Bulldogs. He scored quite well for the Saints, but when he was there, has had injury troubles the last couple of years, so he's at a discount 123,000. And yeah, I think he's another one who you could probably just pick on your bench, and and maybe just suss other options when they come about.
I love this because you're literally like rattling off names and I'm like putting them in right now. This is good.
In defence, Dan, how confident would you be to start these guys on the field, or do you think they're more bench options for us?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Zach Reid is one who you probably wouldn't want to field ideally, but it depends how you're structuring up. You might look to field some more rookies in the forward line potentially, where there's not as good premium options, and then bank maybe 4 premiums in defence or mid-price or however you want to go. So I think Gibkiss is a fairly reliable on-field option. Reid, Caulfield, guys like Ethan Phillips potentially, Toby Pink probably not. So yeah, I think you would probably ideally only want to field one rookie and Zach Williams if you could, but at the same time, yeah, you could probably get away with fielding Reid every so often.
Nice one. I'm sitting here going, I didn't hear Dan Curtin's name once. Breaking my heart.
So Curtin, he's a really interesting one. I think he could be a really good option if he plays, but again, it's looking at those 3 key pillars, the job security I think is a bit of a question mark there. Also his role, does he play as a key defender? Does he play as a halfback? If he's playing as a halfback, I think you would definitely look at him, but yeah, I didn't see enough during the preseason games to suggest he's going to be a regular.
Nice one. It's nice. Like, it's one of those ones you go, yeah, teams. Waiting for teams.
Yeah,
waiting for teams, boys. We're waiting for teams. Oh, jeez. What about the mids? How are we looking for this one? Because I'll tell you what, I've gone Sanders, and then everything else I've just gone, don't know. Harley Reid, that's a big question sitting there for you. You've got him. He's eligible for the forward line as well. We don't live in Western Australia, so the Harley Reid hype train is kind of like, what's going on over there? Oh, they're a bit about him, aren't they? Peter Sumich is like, hang on, what the hell? Well, anyway, there's a lot going on. Talk to me through the mids here, Dan.
So we're pretty stacked in the mids. Colby McKercher, Sanders, I think are the big 2 that you've got to start. Sanders in particular, just racked up disposals for fun against the Hawks in their 2 practice games. Kicked that long range goal in the first game, 30 disposals in the second game. And yeah, he wasn't even doing great in that second game, but then just kept on piling on the possessions. So I think he's one you can reliably slot into your field. Colby McKercher as well. He was another one who was a ball magnet at junior level. He's moved to half back for North Melbourne, going to play in that Harry Sheasel role, which we all loved last year, and I think he can be potentially one of the best cash cows for the season. Then you look to your bench. It sort of depends how deep you're batting. But I really like Jai Clark at the Cats. I think he's got a role in there, especially with Cam Guthrie injured for the next 8 to 10 weeks or so. Matty Roberts off half-back for the Swans. Again, like looking at these roles, often it's roles off half-back or midfield that we're really targeting. Roberts is a bit more expensive at 150, but that's pretty much just because of sub-affected, injury-affected games last season. So I think he's another one to get. Another one I really like from the Hawks, Henry Hustwaite. Has a lot of centre bounce minutes. Will Day probably going to miss the first round, could miss a bit longer than that. And if you've got the extra cash, I think he's worth the risk there.
Nice one. Again, I'm just ticking names off. This is great. Clark for the Cats as well. That was one of the ones that I was really happy to see that you brought up because I'm all over it too. Right, finally, you can list off about 70 of them now for the forwards. Let's go. Dig in, Dan. Dig in.
Genuinely is about 25 options.
We'll start with Harley Reid. Because there was a bit of movement off him after the Eagles' first practice match where he did battle a little bit. But surely we can't leave him out, can we?
Look, if anyone out there wants to not pick him, go nuts because it means I'm a better chance of winning the 50K. So Harley Reid, I think, playing centre bounce mid, moving off to half back as well. I think that's just a great role. The kid could have played AFL last year, really. He was playing VFL a lot, playing more of a forward role just so recruiters could see what he was actually doing. So some people are saying, Sanders averaged, a zillion points compared to Harley Reid at under 18 level. I think that Harley Reid was playing out of position to trial him in different things and also was playing against senior opposition as well in the VFL. So I have full confidence that Harley Reid will be a great cheapie this year. As we saw in the second practice game, he didn't need a lot of the footy to actually score well. So I think that'll carry on into the season. West Coast, I mean, who else have they got? Who else is going to potentially score tons? Elliot Yeo, and then who else?
Yeah, who's going to go? Oh, wait, Harley. Oh, no. I'm going to get this one. You go sit down over there.
He'll fend off his own.
Just get
his
over
own
there.
team,
He's
mate.
like, just get out of my road and I'll get the ball. He's going to Nelson Muntz everything. I'm going to kick it myself. All right. So he'll just go all right off the back and just kick it straight to Oscar Allen. 2+ goals and away you go. Not bad. I'm all over the Harley Reid train. I love this. Who else are we looking at?
Well, Alex Sexton, you said before, Dim is bringing Sexy back, and isn't he just? I mean, he's probably the number one rookie. Who would have thought 2 months ago that Alex Sexton, who wasn't getting a game as a forward, and has just always been a forward, would be the number one rookie in Supercoach? I think he genuinely could be that. Scored, 120 plus in their second practice game. Was on the kick-ins. Not a heap of contested ball, but we don't mind that in Supercoach. If he's getting those cheapies and he can use it quite well, and they're looking for him with his run off half back, I think that's a prime role. 130k, like you can't, play Supercoach and not have Alex Sexton this year. Darcy Wilson's another one, which has some really good signs in the preseason. 130k forward mid, can run all day. Absolutely blitzed the 2K time trial last year at the draft combine. So we know that he can, play on a wing, half forward, and just, run all day. And Ross Lyon loves his running machines as well. So should get plenty of opportunity. And then just to reel off a couple in the forward line, I think it's hard to choose. You may have to choose between one of Charlie Lazaro and Caleb Windsor. Charlie Lazaro might play some more inside mid for North, but his job security probably isn't as strong as Caleb Windsor for the Ds, who is probably going to slot in on a wing, kick 2 in the practice game, just such a smooth mover. And then if you're looking a little cheaper, Bailey Laurie, 125k into his 4th preseason for the Ds. I think he could be a really solid pick as well.
Also, Lazaro's got a great band, Lazaro's Dog. That's a deep cut for everybody out there going, what is James talking about? You got to go back to the early thousands, I think, for the Lazaro's Dog experience.
That might be before my time, I think.
Home entertainment system. Go Google that song. It was not bad.
Dan, one name I wanted to ask you about is went straight into my team when Supercoach opened. Sean Manor at Geelong. I thought this
Manna
is just...
from Werribee. It's not Manna from heaven. It's Manna from Werribee. I love this.
I thought this is just a classic Geelong. They love to pick a mature ager from the VFL or from the Geelong League or something, and they turn them into a star like Tim Kelly or Tom Stewart. Yeah, exactly. And I thought this is just the latest example. Put up some great numbers in the VFL last year. Only 117,000 forward mid in Supercoach. Perfect. But I haven't seen a lot of him in the preseason, to be honest. So where does he sit? Should I be panicking?
Yeah, I think you should be a little bit if you've got him, especially on your field or anything. But I think at the moment, if he's in the 22, I'm probably going to pick him and take the risk. But at the same time, I wouldn't be, absolutely, I guess, pinning all my hopes on him playing, because he played about a quarter and a half in both of the practice games. Scored about 40 points in, very limited game time against the Bombers. So he's definitely in with a chance, but he's probably more likely to be playing a forward role at the Cats anyway. So, yeah, it's a tricky one, especially with the forward mid. Like, he looks like a really good pick if he is playing. But, yeah, I think there's definitely question marks at this stage.
So it's a wait for teams, is that what you're saying?
Yes, it definitely is.
That's a bubble move, I reckon.
And it could be the situation where he's the 4th, named on the interchange, because it's 5-man interchange now, how they're doing it.
Yeah,
and
we
then
haven't
he comes to
mentioned
sub.
this.
So
yeah, we find out an hour before the game who the sub is. So, yeah.
Get your phones out. Simple as that. All right, there you go. That's a run through every single one of the rookies, I think.
Yeah.
We just listed off about
Went on a little
87
bit.
This is it, though. What a year for rookies. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'll be just glued to the telly this week. Don't worry about that. Just going, righto, so he's playing, he's not playing. All right, cool. Then you've got to wait for round 1 anyway.
Counting CBAs, midfield minutes,
this is it.
time on ground.
I'm like, the fact that we actually get Alex Sexton in round 0 just makes me so happy. Just to have that simple, like, all right, we all got tricked. We're going back. Damn you, Dimmer. Especially Al. He's just Dimmer. Anyway, but that's it for the round 0 preview. I'll tell you what, it still sounds weird to say, doesn't it? That's right. But either way, the SuperCoach AFL podcast, we've got another week and a bit. What have we got? 9 days until the first rolling lockout as of next week for round 1. So you've got plenty of time to, of course, sign up to SuperCoach Plus. Get all the insights that you guys will be writing about for codesports.com.au. And, of course, get all your tips in with tips.com.au as well. Because these games count. They might not count in terms of actual, SuperCoach, but here we are. Either way, dig into all things SuperCoach on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and I guess just spend lots of time just tweaking. Just be out there tweaking. Just tweak.
Unlimited trades for another 9 days. Just enjoy it.
Nothing better. Just ignore your family. Ignore the boss. Just go hammering songs. But thanks to Tim for jumping on earlier. Thank you, Dan, for rattling off every single rookie under the sun. And thank you, Al.
James, pleasure.
That's right. I've been Jaymz Clements. This is the Round Zero preview done. Happy super coaching. We'll catch you next week.